right, happy Tuesday here at the Scarlet Faithful. Aaron Brightman coming to you. First, wanted to just thank everyone for listening and watching past the 300 episode mark over the weekend. Didn't even realize it at the time because I hope that it comes through as much as possible. That I'm not really much of a self promoter. I don't even feel comfortable with it. I just want to produce great content and connect with fans, and I hope that I can represent, or speak to or make certain fans, I guess, feel better about going through certain stuff and keeping optimism up. Also, talking about issues when they arise, and um, you know. Things are good right now, I think, overall with Rutgers athletics. I wanted to highlight something specifically with basketball in terms of just what's going on in the college basketball world right now. But at any rate, long-winded point, thank you to all that watch and listen to this episode and also all of my episodes at the Scarlet Faithful. It generally is appreciated. And college basketball, we're a couple weeks out of March now, not even 10 days, 9 days. And obviously Rutgers losing on Sunday did a rapid reaction to the Minnesota loss. And it's an uphill battle to the NCAA tournament, but this team has still turned things around from where they were 2-7 to now 6-8. You have a monster game on Thursday at Purdue. I'm going to have a full preview for that game. But there's a couple of things that happened over the weekend with college basketball that I think I wanted to highlight just in respect to how Rutgers is operated as a program under Steve Pikiell and how I think that it speaks to the positive view and optimism of the long-term and short-term of this program at Rutgers. You had Penn State announced recently that their leading scorer, Kanye Clary, had been dismissed from the team. There's a lot of reports and tweets out there talking about some discontent internally. Mike Rhodes, the first-year coach there, coming from VCU, brought his best player, Ace Baldwin, with him. Sounds like just in terms of minutes, shots, all that stuff might have been an issue. Fans or family members apparently were going on Facebook. So FYI, those of you that are in Rutgers Facebook groups, doesn't mean you can't listen. Again, I'll say it again. You can be critical when fair, but cheap shots and just kind of things that aren't factual shouldn't be out there. But everyone has the right to be critical. Fans, I know, whoever, but stuff gets noticed. And at any rate, there was an issue internally, and Clary is no longer on the team. So that was, I think, in terms of NIL, in terms of transfer portal, there's a lot of dynamics going on that coaches have to deal with, that players have to deal with, and it really has changed the dynamic. And I'm not here to debate. I know some people hate it and think it's ruined. I don't think it's ruined college sports. It's just the reality of the day. And it goes to also criticism of players. And I'm not talking, again, fans have a right to react however they want to react. I hope that it's always done in a respectful way. But I think in terms of what you're seeing with coaches now, airing players out, just trashing their teams. Rick Pitino, Sunday night, up to it once again. You could see the boiling over point for him. Tons of hype coming back to college basketball. And just in terms of how his season has gone, it's been, underwhelming, to be polite. And he lost it on Sunday after losing to Seton Hall. Huge comeback by the Pirates. Good for Rutgers metrics. And Pitino just, going off, saying how certain players are laterally slow, how they're not, the team is not tough. He knew that when they recruited everybody, they weren't going to be very good, like crazy stuff. That's just makes him look awful. But also, how is the culture of that team and that program? How are those players going to move forward from this? How are you a recruit wanting to go there? Obviously, Pitino is a coaching legend. It's not without controversy, most notably at Louisville. But, he's not alone. Just in terms, and, he ripped Joel Soriano last week, who was his big holdover from the previous staff, who, is a very good player. So his inability to connect to his players, his inability to get the most out of his players, that's on him, and he's not holding himself accountable publicly. And he even doubled down and said he doesn't regret anything, and that's he's speaking the truth. Just really egomaniacal stuff here. And you've seen other coaches in their first years of programs. Micah Shrewsbury, who I really like, left Penn State for Notre Dame. He talked about players not being up to their standards and their culture, saying it was unacceptable. You have Ed Cooley, who just, has maybe he's embraced his, kind of villain status, but he said some crazy stuff. And when he didn't leave the bench in that game, that was showing up his players. I thought there was a timeout. He sat on the bench and everybody huddled, away from him. It's just, it's spoiled behavior. It's like these coaches, like your job is to coach, to get the most out of your players. And these high paid, popular coaches are starting to act a little bit, well, maybe not starting in those cases, but their egos are crazy and they're just acting out and showing up their players in a way that really isn't, it's just not respectful. And I just want to go back to Pikiell. I've touched on this throughout the season, but just in terms of how he handled the loss against Penn State, not airing players out, he put them on notice, in a professional way by saying he's going to evaluate everything. And he's obviously been able to push the right buttons, but it's not just this season. It's pretty much every season he's been at Rutgers. Those early teams, the way he got them to play so hard and got the most out of them, that 2017, 2018 team that made that run in the Big Ten tournament after winning just 3 regular season Big Ten games. The way they've made steps over time, the way that 1920 team that broke through in 120 regular season games, they started 6-3. They had no notable wins. He ended up getting that team to get the most out of them. He brought in his guy, Yeboah from Stony Brook, and that he meshed perfectly with that culture and that team and those players. He's brought in transfers throughout his career. And that 21 team, that went to the second round of the NCAA tournament, they lost 5 Big Ten games in a row. He ended up making lineup changes. Jacob Young was starting, wasn't starting, still became a big contributor for that team. Still has good relationships with people in that program, even after transferring to Oregon. And a lot of guys that transferred out that it didn't maybe either work out for them or it just wasn't a fit moving forward. However it is, they all seem to have still good relationships with Pikiell and with the program. And listen, nothing's perfect, and Pikiell's not perfect. And, I'm sure 8 years, there's situations maybe he could have handled better. But in terms of how he's represented Rutgers, how he's led this program, the culture of the program, this team left for dead once again at 2-7, wins 4 in a row. Obviously disappointing against Minnesota, but plenty of wins still on the table to grab. And also, just look at Jeremiah Williams, right? Keeping him ready. Going into the season, not even thinking he's going to play because of the 2-time transfer rule. That gets abolished. Then you're dealing with the legal stuff with the gambling suspension, and then having him ready to go, having him mesh within the team pretty seamlessly right from the get, right? You had guys that lost or took on different roles with Jeremiah Williams back. Noah Fernandez, right? Playing a lot less. What does he do? He has that breakthrough game against Wisconsin, 5 threes. He played well at the start of that Northwestern game before not playing. It seemed like a little bit of we said it was a little bit of an injury in that second half. You have Oscar Palmquist, doesn't play for 3 games, comes out and turns the game around against Northwestern at the end of that second half. Andre Hyatt lost his starting job with Williams coming. He's been a key contributor. He's made some big shots in that winning streak. He has been the consummate program player over the last couple of years, shuffling between the starting lineup and coming off the bench, just getting guys to buy in. It's not just developing players. It's getting them to buy into the culture of the program. How Pikiell has navigated the transfer portal hasn't been perfect. But sometimes he's selective to a pain point. Sometimes his rotations are too big, in terms of how people view it, in terms of minute distribution. I really believe, and I've said this before, but he believes that every player can help the team in some way, shape, or form, and he never gives up on that. During the season, you always see him go back to certain guys, and he more times than not, gets the most out of every player he has. Not all the time, but that's why you see his teams always never quit, always typically with their backs against the wall, come through more times than not. They're built for adversity. He always talks about obstacles. When they lost to Minnesota, even, he didn't call anyone out. He just said they didn't play very good defense. They didn't play Rutgers defense, and they didn't make enough layups in the second half. They missed too many. Well, that's factual, and that's telling the truth. And of course, there's conversations that happen behind the scenes, but I just think that he understands, although he, has expressed discontent with the transfer portal and the timing there. NIL, he's been a proponent of, but obviously spoken of the challenges that Rutgers has with NIL. He still can connect to his players, and he still gets his players bought in to the program, and he still gets his players connected and not giving up. And you're seeing multiple examples of that this season. You've seen it in the past, just like the loyalty with guys like Baker and Harper Jr., McConnell. It was well reported before last season McConnell could have left for a big-time NIL offer at another program, and he stayed. Now you have Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey coming. These guys could have gone to any program in the country. Constantly when you interview players, and when I've interviewed them at preseason and recruiting and just talking about Pikiell and the connection with the coaching staff and how everyone's treated within the program. Jeremiah Williams just said it on Jerry Carino's podcast last week on just what a great guy Pikiell is and how much he wants to be with the program. That's inspiring stuff. That gets the most out of your players. And, these big time coaches going, venting their discontent on their players and the culture of college basketball these days and NIL and all this stuff. None of it is conducive to building a winning culture and cohesiveness within your locker room. And their ego overtakes everything. And I think that, again, Pikiell's not perfect. This isn't meant to be some defense. It's just, I think, perspective and commentary in where we're at in the ecocenter of college basketball right now. And that, everyone wants to win more, including me, including Rutgers, right? They want to win more. And if they don't make the NCAA tournament, we're at the point in Pikiell's tenure that every year they don't make the NCAA tournament, it's a disappointment. There's always circumstances. And this season can still be, I think, end on a positive if they can, continue to win in Big Ten play down the stretch. They can make the season. The NCAA dream is not done yet, but if they can end in a positive way, that's certainly going to bear fruit, I think, for next year. But Pikiell's also said, every year is different, and it's going to be more and more challenging. And there's been a lot said about his penchant for wanting to develop players and how that's taking a little bit of a different direction, I guess you could say, not having high school players and develop them for 4 years. And that is going to be a challenge. But I think where he is going to excel is his team first attitude. He's always talked about he doesn't care who starts. It's about who finishes games. And I think that's players have started to bought into that, because you see how his rotations, how his lineups, and how he gives players different spots in games. He never gives up on players, and there is opportunity there, whether you start or you come off the bench or not. So he practiced what he preaches, and I think that his ability to connect to players and to get them to believe, and his belief in them, it's going to go a long way in this new era of college basketball. One other thing I think is worth noting is that whole tangent that Pikiell went on about KenPom and how much KenPom can't guard me, and basically, kind of poo-pooing analytics a little bit. Listen, Rutgers uses analytics. That was a classic Pikiell rant. His goal in doing that, in my opinion, I'm sure the scrutiny, the information that's out there, it's easier for fans to kind of nitpick on things. But don't be fooled at all, where that's just a classic Pikiell distraction, taking the heat off his players. And that was after a win. But my point is, he understands the pressure. He understands the microscope that they're under. That's why he laments social media and asks them to be off their phones all the time. because he knows that, people can access so much information now and data and use it against people and just, um, make things pretty tough for players in terms of outside aspects they never had to deal with before. So for me, that was just classic, just ranting to distract and keep heat off his own players and to kind of make, a spectacle. So that got the attention. And that's what he does. He his players recognize that, and they know he goes to bat for them, and there's a ton of value there. And as Rutgers, is in the running in the future now, Brandon Storrs, top 100 recruit in the 25 class. He has Rutgers as his 3 finalists, along with Georgia Tech and Xavier, deciding next week. Trey McKinney is the top recruit in the 25 class that's talking to Rutgers, has already visited. Smoke Williamson recruit. As you continue to, this is how you build trust with these top recruits. Obviously, winning, right? But just in terms of, respect that you earn with your past players, your current players, and what you do publicly, right? And Pikiell going on, although I don't love that he, listen, everything has their value, right? And analytics, it's useful and it's helpful. And I rely on it. I get it that, it's not everything. It's meant to be a piece as everything, right? But the fact that, he's out there talking about that, getting asked by a former player, by the way, Caleb McConnell, real players know what he's doing, and he is going to bat for them in a little bit of a zany, entertaining way that, people eat up. And he's, grumpy Pikiell, whatever, he has his own way. And, I feel like I can read him pretty well over the years. And that to me was just perfect distraction in terms of knowing that, the winning streak was ramping up, pressure was growing, and he put the spotlight on himself, not because he's an egomaniac, because he wants to protect his players and he wants to keep them focused on the task at hand. And he wants the headlines geared towards something that is not going to be, scrutinizing or a distraction to his own players and their performance. Obviously, winning is positive, and they want to see their names written about in a positive way. But just knowing how many peaks and valleys there are in a season, Pikiell, he's getting better at picking his spots, I think, and kind of stepping out and putting, he's always been accountable. But I also thought that just that in particular last week, that example to me was just really smart in terms of, and another example that maybe wasn't as obvious in terms of going to bat for his players in an offhanded way that, is drawing attention away from them and, helping him help keep them in a vacuum, so to speak. It's impossible to do in this day and age, but I just thought that was notable. And just talking about next year, just in terms of, I had a Spaces last week on Twitter after Northwestern game. I had my friend and former Michigan player Ant Wright on, and he was talking about the challenges for next year, just in terms of getting players to buy into roles and just having, top recruits doesn't spell guaranteed success. And I think that's something that is very true. And something I want to talk about a lot this offseason, and also just, the increased scrutiny and pressure of everything that next year is going to bring. But I think just in terms of Pikiell's steady hand, his ability to keep his team focused, to keep his team together, to keep his team believing, not only in themselves, but in him and how the direction of the program is going, I think has been kind of the backbone of their success throughout his tenure. And I think that's something I just think is worth noting and worth appreciating right now, regardless of how this season ends up. Yes, there's frustrations in Pikiell's tenure, right? The free throw shooting, offense in general. Sometimes, they've certainly, there's certain games that you wish they had back, but that's that way with everybody. And there's no perfect program, there's no perfect coach, and I just think there's a lot that Pikiell has brought, and a reason that there's been a steady climb in the ascension of this program, and why I think there's more to climb, more room to grow in this program, is because of his leadership and his philosophy and how he manages his players and how he communicates and how he represents publicly and privately, how his players have performed, both academically, on the court, how they've handled pressure, how they've handled scrutiny, how they've handled, big games, how they've gotten off the mat time and time again. And then as you increase things and as the profile grows, I think there's a lot of reasons to be encouraged. So as you're seeing these bigger name coaches, these higher paid coaches have meltdowns publicly, Pikiell's been a steady hand this season. Not the first time. Won't be the last time. Don't give up on this team. And thank you so much for listening and watching the Scarlet Faithful podcast once again.